Welcome to the Scottish Books Long Weekend. It's great to see you. Thanks very much for joining us. This live online event is brought to you by Publishing Scotland and Books from Scotland. It's great that you can join us wherever you might be. Obviously, it's a bit different because it's online, but it means that we can have a huge audience. And also, I think this is the very first book event that I've chaired where I haven't had to show the audience where the emergency exits are. And perhaps for you, it's the first book event that you've been to where, you're not craning your neck to see over the tall person in front of you or the one with the big hair. Anyway, it's a very great pleasure for me to interview this lovely, wonderful, I have to say, stellar success story herself. She's like something out of a fairy tale when it comes to her publishing story. So please welcome, I hope we're going to see her any minute now, Estelle Maskame. Hi, Estelle.
Hi.
Hello, aren't you so gorgeous? It's lovely to see you. And congratulations are in order because it's 10 years since you first started the Dimily series when you were 13 years old. And then 3 years later, you got your first book deal. And also last month, you published your latest book, which is the beginning of a new series. It's called Becoming Mila. So this is your seventh book, Estelle. One of the great things I think about reading your books is that your own enthusiasm comes across hugely. So are you a natural enthusiast? In other words, are you just excited about your seventh book being published as you were about your first?
Oh, absolutely. Like writing has always been my hobby from a young age. I would have always still been writing, even if, I didn't do it as a job. I just love it that much. So I fall in love with every story that I write. I get to know the characters really well. And every time I put out a new book, I'm just so excited to share like these new characters in this new story with people all over the world. So it is really exciting. Every book I put out, it doesn't matter how many I write, it will always be exciting.
Is it more or less stressful?
It's a mixture of both. At the same time, I feel like the more books I put out, the more I feel comfortable with my place as a writer. I kind of know what my style is. I feel like I do belong in the market and I do belong in the industry. But at the same time, the more books you put out, the more pressure there is because you just want to continue to deliver a good project. So when everyone says like, oh, I love your first book or I love the third book, then you're like, well, I hope my next books can be like as good as previous books. So there's a lot more pressure, I think, but yeah, I just love it.
You do, don't you? I think it's really worth crediting. One of the things I'm always really interested in when I interview anybody who's successful, actually, from all kinds of professions, but there's always, almost without fail, a teacher there in the background who's made all the difference. It's been like the fairy godmother who came along with the magic wand. And you had a teacher who pretty much changed the course of your life when you were 11 years old. So let's hear it for her.
Yes, so back in primary school in Scotland, we have a thing called story writing, which is once a week you get a prompt and you write a story based on it. And by story, it's usually just one A4 page, very small. But then you got rewards at the end of the week. So the best stories got a badge saying star writer, and collecting these badges was honestly the highlight of my week. Like I just loved writing all through school, and all my teachers knew that I loved writing because I would also bring in stories that I wrote out with school. I would bring them into school to give to my teachers as well. One teacher even had some of my stories in a folder up on the windowsill for my classmates to read if they wanted to. And I remember in primary 7, I was just handed in another story writing project just as part of like the weekly curriculum. And yeah, my teacher just wrote on it saying that this was written like a real author. And that at that moment, that was when I realized, oh, like maybe I could actually be an author, like this could be my job. Because up until then, it was more just something that I enjoyed, and I never really considered it as something that I could do as a career. So from that moment on, ever since my primary 7 teacher said that I wrote like a real author, I started kind of thinking of myself as maybe one day I could be an author.
You credit her by name in one of your books, actually. So yeah. How did you feel about that? Does she read your books now?
Yeah, so I did get back in touch with her. She was at a different school. She's a head teacher at another local school, and I did an event at her school. I spoke to the young kids, the primary ones, primary twos, went in and spoke to them about following your dream job. And she was actually really emotional because she remembers having me as a student. She remembers reading my stories, and for her as a teacher, she found it really amazing that she had an impact on one of her students. I think as a teacher, that's something you strive for. So yeah, she was a bit emotional about it, and I think she really appreciated the little mention that I gave her in the acknowledgements as well.
So here you are, a quine, to use the local language, a quine from Peterhead, but you don't write about the northeast of Scotland, ever. All of your books are located across that pond. You write as if you were in America. Why is that?
So although I absolutely love Scotland, I'm so proud to be Scottish. I love living here in this little corner of the country. It's just too familiar to me to write about this country. And when I write...
Is that because this is your own escapism? People read very often to escape, but are you escaping as well?
Kind of. It's just enjoyable for me to write about somewhere else. And growing up, American culture was always seen as like this amazing glamorous lifestyle, and I think kind of American TV movies played into that a little bit, and growing up I was always like, oh, why wasn't I born in America? I should have been American. So I just wrote my book set in America because as a 12-13-year-old that was just what was the most fun for me. And as the years have gone on, I've realized that that's actually what I'm most comfortable writing, is writing about American characters. And I love the whole process of researching all my settings. So I've got settings all over America, from, popular cities from New York City to Los Angeles to Nashville in the latest book. And then I've got some more unknown, random sort of small towns and cities as well that people have probably never heard of. But I just have so much fun researching them. So it makes the writing process really enjoyable for me as a writer as well.
So as you're saying, this one is mostly set in Tennessee, starts off in LA, and then Mila, who's very, very naughty and has to be kind of shunted off to the old family home in Tennessee. Was that, because the culture across America is hugely diverse. What was it like, really investing in Tennessee? Because here you are, like Mila herself, actually. You've never been to a tailgate party. I shouldn't imagine there's too many in Peterhead. No. You've never been to a honky-tonk bar. There's none in Peterhead. So what was it like, being part of that?
Again,
and also you're a country music fan. So
yeah, massive. I think that was a part of the big reason that I did choose to set a book in Tennessee, was because I am personally a massive fan of country music and just the whole country atmosphere. So like trucks and farms and just honky tonks, which is the name of like music bars. I just love the whole sort of atmosphere of it. So just researching it was so much fun, and writing the book was really fun for me as well. I just loved it all. And I actually had plans to go to Nashville last summer. That was obviously cancelled, but I'm hoping I'll get that rebooked soon so that I can go back and get to experience Nashville in person.
And visit the honky tonk bar.
Yeah, the Honky Tonk Central, the bar mentioned in the book, that is a real location. So I need to go there one day.
Do they know that they feature in your book?
No, they don't. Sometimes in previous books, especially if the setting plays a bigger role. So in one of my books, Dare to Fall, the character works at a real location. So I did obviously talk to them first because my character was going to work there. But if your characters are just visiting, then it's fine. They won't know unless someone tells them about it. So I think they would find it pretty cool though.
I think so, yeah. I think you should get a standing ovation when you get there. You'll be going up to the first floor. But tell me about the characters that are in your latest book, because we're used to, you're a romantic writer, aren't you? So obviously there's going to be a romance here. It's a kind of enemies turn lovers romance. I don't think there's too many spoilers in that really, but you have these fantastic characters, Mila and Blake, both of them very gorgeous. But tell me, give us the background to why Mila is there, a bit about her family, Blake, who I think is probably your dream man, frankly, and their family backgrounds.
So Mila is the daughter of an A-list celebrity. Her dad is a massive movie star, like think Tom Cruise level of movie star. That is her dad.
Everett Harding.
Yeah, that's his name, Everett Harding. So
is that a Tennessee name, by the way?
I think Everett is quite a southern name. That's why I picked it.
Yeah.
I'm not a massive fan of the name, but I think it suits him. So yeah, Everett is his name. And they live out in LA. His dad's got a really busy career. He's part of like a movie franchise that's kind of ongoing at the moment. The newest installment in the movies are coming out like this summer. So her dad is under like strict publicity rules, like no bad press at the moment. And Mila kind of gets herself into a bit of trouble at one of the publicity events. There's some champagne on offer, and being a young 16-year-old girl, she kind of wants to get involved and experiment. So she's backstage sipping on this champagne, and of course she gets a little bit
knocking it back, actually. Knocking back the champagne.
Yeah. So she makes a bit of a fool of herself, and therefore her father and her dad's manager isn't very happy. So they decide to send her off back home to where they originally come from, which is a small town in the suburbs of Nashville, Tennessee. So they send her off to live with her aunt and her grandfather for the summer, just so that she can't kind of stir up any more negative drama, just until the movie is released. So off she goes to Nashville. She's not looking forward to it too much, but she quickly realizes while she's there that she can use this new freedom to discover who she is as a person, because she is so used to just being her dad's daughter. She doesn't really have her own identity. So it's a coming of age novel really about Mila. That's why the title is Becoming Mila, because it's about self-discovery. She's figuring out what her identity is and who she wants to be as a person. And she just lets her hair down over the summer, and she has experiences for herself rather than through her dad's career. And yeah, she learns a lot about herself. And while she's there, she meets Blake Avery. They get off on the wrong foot to begin with. But then they quickly bond and form a relationship over the fact that they both come from very similar backgrounds. Blake's mother is the mayor of Nashville, so Blake is also under a huge amount of pressure too. So he can relate to Mila that there's no room for mistakes when your parents are in the public eye. So they have quite strained relationships with their parents because of all this pressure that's on their shoulders at such a young age. And Blake loves country music. He has dreams to be a musician. And Mila finds it really inspiring that Blake does have his own identity, despite his mother being such a high, prolific figure. So I think Mila kind of looks to Blake and realizes that she wants to be that as well. She wants to be her own person. She wants to have her own passions and interests.
Yeah, I think that's really great about it, that these characters who've got similarities, but yet they're not similar. It is very obvious right from the very beginning, as in all good YA romance, that they are going to get together.
Of course.
So tell me about creating Blake, because what I was saying earlier on, I'm sure it's true, is that I think Blake could be somebody that you would completely fancy. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
So describe him then.
So Blake is dark-haired. I think most of my characters, bar one, maybe are all dark-haired, because my personal type is dark hair, dark features, a bit of a bad boy, kind of rough around the edges, sort of. He's got dimples, which I think is adorable. He's confident, and obviously he plays music as well. And any boy that will sing country music, I'm all in for. So yeah, I do have a soft spot for Blake, especially when we see him performing in the book.
Now, you're saying that he's a bit of a bad boy. The thing about writing young adult fiction, though, because you're writing for 12 plus, aren't you? So it can't be too bad. There's got to be, I would imagine, some kind of censorship around what you can write about. You know, the lovers can be lovers only to a certain extent, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Definitely with writing YA, there are certain lines that we can't cross. But for me, writing YA, I love it because I remember what it was like to be a teenager growing up. And there's so many experiences you go through as a teenager. And teenagers do make mistakes as well. Like obviously Blake's a bit of a bad boy, so he's not perfect. Mila's not perfect either. No teenager is.
She's quite petulant, isn't she? I actually preferred Blake to Mila. I thought Mila was a bit spoiled and a bit petulant, whereas I totally got him.
Yeah, I love them both, actually. I think they bounce off each other really well.
Mm-hmm. But I think I can see why it can become a trilogy, because you've got quite a number of characters there who we feel that we relate to. There's Tori and Savannah. They've got a lovely friendship, kind of yin and yang with each other, but they're really good. And I keep going back to the place as well, because I just wanted to be there. There's one bit where they're on the ranch together, and I think Tori and Mila are on a horse for probably the first time in their lives. And Savannah is just, and I thought, I am there. I felt as if I was there. It was just wonderful to be part of this created location that you had. And there's a swimming pool as well, which I would have liked to have been at as well.
Yeah, I think the swimming pool scene is a fan favourite. We expected the readers to like that scene a lot.
So you've got the music side of things with Blake. You love music. Do you write with music on?
Yeah, 100%.
You've always got a playlist, haven't you?
Yeah, I cannot write without music. I can't write in silence, absolutely not. I need music on in the background. I find that music kind of inspires me and gets me motivated. So I need it there in the background to keep me going. And often I'll listen to music that kind of matches the sort of scene that I'm writing. And for Becoming Mila, I basically just listened to country music for however long. The 8 months I spent writing it, I just had country music on repeat. And we've got a playlist together that I put together for the book, and that is printed in the back of the paperback. So you can see some of the songs that I listened to while reading the book. While writing the book, and also some of the songs that are mentioned within the book too. So that's really exciting to have the playlist there as well for the readers to listen to.
So you're writing about America in Peterhead in the northeast of Scotland, and you certainly started off writing in your parents' house. Were they aware of, all this, imaginative creativity that was going on? And how supportive were they?
They always laugh now and say that at the time they thought I was just a typical teenager who was locked in my bedroom on the laptop, would never come out to say hello. Like if my grandparents came up to visit, I wouldn't even show my head out the door because I was so engrossed in writing. So I think they just thought I was just, as I say, just messing around on the internet. But no, I was hard at work working on my hobby, and that was writing. And yeah, I think once they figured out how passionate I was about it, and then once I kind of told them that I'd been posting it online and that, people were really supportive of it and I had all these readers, they kind of realized then that, she might actually be good at this writing thing, and this could be something she might do in the future. And they've been supportive right from when I was a young age. So I'm really grateful to have that support from them and from all my family as well.
Have you got a bookish family?
Not particularly. Honestly, no, I don't know where I get it from. They often joke that I got muddled up at birth or something, because I don't have any writers really in the family. My dad doesn't read, my sister doesn't read. My mum's a very avid reader. She was always taking me to the library when I was younger. We would always, if
for her, libraries are fabulous places.
Yeah, she would always take me, and she would pick a stack and I would pick a stack. And we would often, on holiday and stuff together, us two would be sitting at the pool, we would both have a book. But other than that, yeah, no one else in my family is massive readers. So I don't know where I get my writing gene from. I don't know where I get my passion for reading other than my mum. But no, we're not a massively bookish family.
Well, of course, you can buy books online at the moment for this specific event. If you go to bookshop.org, you can buy any of the books by any of the authors for this weekend, including, of course, Estelle. And let me also tell you that 10% of that goes towards promoting publishing in Scotland. So it's really worth doing that. Did you feel influenced by writers when you were growing up? Is there anybody you would think, yeah, that's who really set me, particularly on the young adult fiction path? No
authors specifically. It was more just the genre as a whole. I went from reading, you know, like young kind of kiddie books. I was obsessed with like Horrid Henry and these books about fairies. I have the whole collection. I'm pretty sure they're still at my parents' house up in the loft somewhere. I used to like collect all the books. And then as I kind of entered my teens, I started reading, you know, young adult novels, and I just totally fell in love with it. I found it so, like, being a 12-year-old reading about like 16-year-olds, I just found it so cool, like thinking, oh, is this what teenagers get up to? Like, I can't wait to grow up. So I just fell in love with the genre like back then. And I just remember knowing that that was what I wanted to write. So when I was 13 reading young adult, I knew that that was the style I wanted to write too. So yeah, just the genre as a whole inspired me rather than specific authors.
So we've talked a bit about your parents being supportive. Your dad is a funeral director, your mum's a shop assistant. So they were obviously, presumably they didn't think, well, did they think it was unusual to have somebody becoming a professional author?
Yeah, I mean, even myself, I thought it was insane.
You still think it's a wee bit insane. I think you do, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, to everyone, to my whole family, it was just a bit surreal to begin with, especially maybe the first year or so. It was sort of kind of finding our feet and being like, what is actually going on? Because it's so rare to kind of come across authors in your real life. Like, how many people personally know a real like published author? I don't know any, and I never did until I became one myself. So yeah, it was just unbelievable. But then
what did your pals think about it? Because that's the sort of thing, you know, if it was a YA novel and one of the people in the class becomes, you know, incredibly popular and well liked, there's bound to be somebody who's horrendously jealous and ghastly about it, and they would get bullied. Did any of that happen to you?
I mean, before I got my book deal, when I was posting my writing online at a young age, I did get some negativity towards it from people in school, mostly because I think sometimes if you put yourself out there, you can attract negative attention, but it is just jealousy at the end of the day. If you've got a dream and you want to follow it, you've got to put yourself out there. And I always think now, at the end of the day, if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have gotten to where I am now. So yeah, I did get negative feedback, but I didn't let it stop me at all. I just kept going. If anything, it motivated me even more just to keep going, to work harder, to kind of prove everyone wrong. And then I think once my kind of books got popular and then I got the book deal, I think everyone kind of shut up a little bit at that point.
A lot of your friends were very supportive, weren't they? You know, friends that you'd given the work to read, they were tweeting about it, and then it got retweeted, and it was literally word of mouth on social media that gave you this incredible break.
Yeah, so it was mostly all through Twitter. So I had a big Twitter account, had a big following on Twitter. I just started posting the link, asking people if they wouldn't mind reading it. And a few people checked it out and they really enjoyed it. So then they tweeted about it, and then their followers kind of were interested. So then they read it. And as you're saying, it was just word of mouth. The more people were talking about it, the more other people became curious. Like, no one wanted to be the one missing out on kind of the hype. So everyone was like, oh, what's this book everyone's reading? And it just spread from there. It just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And people started making fan trailers. People started making, you know, edits and things for the books. And people were sitting there waiting for the next chapter to go up. And it was like a little community. And those same readers had been with me from the very beginning, and they're still with me now. They're still supporting my books now as a published author. So I was really...
You probably feel part of your story.
Yeah, I think for them it's really special to have watched the whole journey from start to now, and to still not know kind of where we're going to go next is really exciting. And I like to think that my readers have a really close connection with me, because I have been really open on social media. Like, I've shared my journey the whole way through. I'm really active. I'm always talking to my readers on there. So I feel like they know me as a person as well. They've watched me grow up, and yeah, I just love kind of going on this journey with them all.
Tell me about your writing process, because you are pretty methodical about how you go about things, aren't you?
Yeah, but I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I'm very slow when it comes to writing chapters, because the chapter has to pretty much be perfect before I move on. But I'm the worst for missing deadlines. I don't know how my editors put up with me, honestly. I I don't think I've made a single deadline since I signed my book deal back in 2014. But it is just because I'm such a perfectionist. I don't want to send the book over until I am 100% happy with it. And yeah, I love my writing process. It's
got a pin board, haven't you? You've got little chapters.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'm quite organized, sometimes I just wing it. So at the moment, I am kind of more on the winging it side of writing. So just making it up as I go, which I know for a lot of authors, that is like a bizarre thing to do, is just to go in with no plan and just to invent the story as you write. But for me,
is that what you do?
Yeah.
So when you wrote, for instance, with the Dimily series, when you wrote the first line of the first book, you had no idea what the last line of the third book was going to be.
I didn't even know that it was going to be a trilogy. I just thought it was going to be one book. Same with Becoming Mila. I just thought that was going to be one book. I had no idea it was going to turn into a trilogy. But for me, that's the most exciting part, is not knowing where my own story is going. I'm like learning about my characters, like at the same time as my characters are learning about themselves. So it keeps it fun. It keeps it interesting for me as I'm writing, just to never know what's around the next corner. I usually only know what's going to happen in the next chapter. Any further than that, and I have no clue.
It's a good marketing ploy, though, isn't it, to have a trilogy, to have a series? Because you buy one book, you're kind of committed to three, because your books are, honestly, hugely addictive.
I mean, I've always wanted to write another trilogy again, because I wrote the Dimly trilogy, then I wrote a few standalones. And I did have in my mind that I would love to write another series again, just because it's so fun writing about the characters over a longer period of time, and you can really flesh out their story across 3 books rather than just kind of tying it into one book. And for the readers as well, they get to live with the characters longer. So a series is just all around a more exciting project to work on.
It is. It's like having a box set, isn't it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Where you want to go from one to the other. So have you got no idea? We've got the Becoming Mila, which is the first book. I know that you started writing the second one, which is called
Trusting Blake.
Trusting Blake. And do you have a title or any idea about the third book?
Nope, no title about the third book yet. So this is what I mean, like it's so organic, like we just make it up as we go, which is so fun. It kind of keeps us on our toes. My editors, as I say, I don't know how they cope with me. I'm all over the place half the time. It must be difficult for them working on edits when, you know, we're editing like the second book and we don't know what the third book's going to be yet. But it's so much fun. I just love it.
This weekend is very much about publishers as well as authors and books. How important has it been for you to have a small independent publisher like the one that you have?
Yeah, so I am published with Black and White Publishing, who are based in Edinburgh. They're a small independent publisher. They're a team of, I don't even think there's 15 of them in the office. It's a very small team of people. But I've worked with them since I was 17 years old, and I always rave about them, how lucky I am to be working with Black and White Publishing. From the very beginning, they've always had my best interests at heart. I think that is the best part of having, you know, an independent publisher with a small team of people. You get to know them all individually. You get to build relationships with them. And because they've watched me grow up as well, I feel like they've kind of, like they've supported me, they've supported my career the whole way, and they've looked out for me, they've kept me on the right track. And I'm just so thankful that they took that chance on me at a young age, back in 2014. Because
let's go back. Can we go back to 2014?
Yeah.
What was it like when you got the phone call from a publisher saying, we would like you to come to us? You started off with this online writing platform. The P&J, the Press and Journal, the local paper, did a wee story about you. Then the local television did a story about you. And then you get the big news. What was that like? Talk me through that.
So I can remember coming home from school at lunch one day, and I walked into the kitchen and my mum and dad were kind of in a panic. They were like, oh, a publisher has just phoned. You need to phone him back. Here's the name. Here's the number. And I was like, oh my goodness, what's going on? So I called back on my lunch break at school and I spoke to Campbell from Black and White Publishing. and he was just really enthusiastic. He asked me if I wouldn't mind sending over my work for them to check out, and of course I was more than happy to do that. And I remember going back to school that afternoon and I could not focus in my classes. Like, I was so distracted, like my mind was racing. And I didn't really think anything would happen. I thought once I emailed over, the books that I'd written so far, that they would give me some feedback and that would be it. I didn't think they would actually take the chance and publish me. But I remember like a week, maybe the next week or so, I was just sitting in the living room, my phone rang, and it was Campbell again saying that they would love to publish the trilogy. And I remember just going in the kitchen and just kind of having a little scream to myself, because I was finally getting published. It was a massive dream of mine, and I just never thought it would come true. And it wasn't something I was actively chasing at the time. It wasn't like I was searching for a book deal. It just came to me because I'd put myself out there and had been working hard. So it was like a dream. It was like a whirlwind those first couple months.
That's it. Now, you already had 3 books though, didn't you? You'd already written, didn't you? And then, even though you were told that you were going to be published, you decided that you would rewrite virtually the whole thing. Now,
yeah. Because I was so young when I started Dimly, and 13 years old.
Had you ever been kissed at 13, can I ask you?
What was that, sorry?
Had you ever been kissed at 13? Here you are writing this romantic fiction.
My dad might be watching this, but yeah. But yeah, so 13 years old, and as I say, I always write for fun, but even back then it was purely fun. So I wasn't really overthinking it. So when I got the book deal, I realized that, I had to go back and change some things and improve it so that it was a bit more polished for going out into the world. And also my writing style had changed a lot from the age of 13 to 17, 18, 19 when I rewrote the trilogy. And
when you saw how you'd written at 13, were you proud? Were you embarrassed? How did you feel?
Majorly embarrassed. Even now, I can't look back at old work. It makes me feel a bit sick. Like I can't even read it. I can't open my eyes. But at the same time, I'm proud of it, because if I hadn't written that, I wouldn't have improved and I wouldn't have gotten to where I am. So yeah, although it is embarrassing, I am proud of it because I still wrote it, and I'm proud that I wrote it at such a young age as well, because not many 13-year-olds can say that, they wrote, a full-length novel at that age. So
10 years ago, you were writing as a reader of the stuff that you were writing. You're a teenager yourself. You're now what, 24, 23, 24?
Yeah, 24 next week.
Oh, happy birthday when it comes.
Thank you.
So will you maybe change the age group that you write about, or would it feel a little bit too scary perhaps to move from this genre, which you're obviously very good at, very skilled at?
It's quite a daunting thought, because although I'm about to turn 24, I still feel like a teenager at heart. I don't feel like I'm an adult yet. I don't have that sort of experience in life yet to write a novel about, like adult fiction. I don't think I would be able to do it justice. Whereas young adult fiction, I feel like is just the spot where I need to be. I just love writing about teenagers. I love writing about them growing up and discovering themselves, because I've lived through my teenage years and I remember what it was like. So for me, it's just the most comfortable to write, and I love writing YA. So I'm going to stick with young adult fiction for the foreseeable future, but that doesn't mean that I won't potentially go in different directions like later down the line.
Because you left school. Once you got this publishing deal, you did, I think it was incredibly brave. You left school. I think you were in your final year, mind you. But, you could have been going on to university or college or something else. Do you think you might still do that? I mean, would it appeal to you, for instance, to go off and do English literature at university?
No, I hate studying. I was so glad to leave school and be done with studying forever. I never really had much of a desire to go to university. I wasn't too career-minded. So that's why the book deal came at just the right time, because I was still sort of figuring out where I wanted to go in life, what direction I wanted to go in. And luckily the book deal came just at the right time, and I've not really had to consider it anymore. So no, I don't think I would ever go back to uni or anything. I think I'm hoping just to be a writer for as long as possible.
So you're a full-time writer, which, as you say, was always your dream. Mm-hmm. Has given you the resources to buy your own flat, You've got your own place now. And it might surprise people to hear that you haven't bought it in the central belt of Scotland. You haven't bought it in Nashville. You've bought it in Peterhead. So you're still this hometown girl. Is it really important for you to stick with your roots, do you think?
It's so funny because back in my teens, I was adamant that, I wanted out of this small town. I was like, oh, I can't wait to like grow up and move away to like the big city or something. But as I've grown older, I've realized how much I actually love it, having like a community around you. And also my entire family is in this town. Like I don't have anyone who lives anywhere else. And I've got a really large family.
The blue tune of Peterhead.
Yeah, everyone is here. So I don't want to leave. I'm happy staying right where my family is. I love all my friends here as well. And yeah, this little corner of Scotland has really grown on me, and I just love living here. I wouldn't go anywhere.
Are you going to be able to find your own Blake or your own Tyler living in Peterhead? What's the talent like?
Dire at the moment. No, I mean it's my family often joke that because I write romance novels that my expectations with guys is too high, and I can see where they're coming from. I think because I write about these guys that are my perfect type, I expect those people to exist in real life as well.
Want to walk off the page.
So when I don't when I don't meet someone who's exactly like, Blake Avery or Tyler Bruce or any of my other characters, I seem to kind of just shut it down. So I think I need to just branch out a bit more and realize that, boys in real life aren't like fictional boys.
What about, one good thing would be if, well, I'm sure you'd love this, if your books were serialized for television or there was a film. So you could actually be involved in the casting process for one of your dream male characters and perhaps fall in love with the actor.
Yeah, that would be ideal.
I'm going to have to start writing this young adult fiction, actually. I'll put you in it. Now, there's been questions throughout our chat from the audience from YouTube. So if you just bear with me while I see if I can get to some of the questions. Are you up for that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So this question is from Holly, and she's referring to the music of your latest book, and it said, oh no, it's not, it's from the Dimily trilogy actually. She's saying, what would Eden and Tyler's song be?
Ooh, that's tough because I have playlists for all of the books in the series. That I can't think of one off the top of my head. There's too much, but if you guys want to check out my Spotify, it's just Estelle Maskame. You can see all the playlists for my books on there, so you can see all the songs that I relate to the characters.
Of course, as soon as this finishes, you're going to think what the song is. That's how it always works.
Yeah, I've got so many I can't just pinpoint one.
This is from Christina. She said, what inspired you to write the Becoming Mila plot? What brought that about?
A mixture of the country element of it and also the whole sort of world of celebrity. Those were two themes that I was really interested in, so I thought I would combine them. So I thought, I would set Mila up in a celebrity family, and then we would move the setting to Tennessee. So I've never written a book set in the south of America before, so the southern setting was totally new to me. So yeah, just the whole country setting combined with celebrity, I thought it was a really fun project.
I think that one of the things that you really enjoy about it is doing the research, though.
Yeah, of course.
That is part of it. So when you are doing that, are you depending on the internet? For instance, with the lockdown, did it make any huge difference really to how you would go about researching a book? Would you have been onto a plane to go and visit Nashville, for instance? Or are you really quite happy being in your house in Peterhead with the mouse in your hand and just searching around that way?
Yeah, I do it all on the internet.
Are you looking at Google Maps and stuff like that?
Yeah, Google Maps. So, for example, I think on Google Maps, you can actually go into Honky Tonk Central, the bar in Becoming Mila. You can actually see the inside and move around on Google Maps. So for example, I just used that for when Mila was describing what she was seeing. I just described what I was seeing on Google Maps. So it's so easy to figure out things these days, to learn about places so far away. Every information that you could possibly need is online. So yeah, I can do it all from home. It's no problem.
When you started to write about America then, you were 13. Had you been to America?
I had when I was really young. So I think about 3 and 6 years old. So cannot remember it, just really young as a little kid.
And how much then, when you're writing, do you have to research the kind of language that you're using? You know, the grammar that you would be using, it's so different. Americanisms.
So the grammar, mostly for like the Americanisms in the US language, I'm pretty confident with that, actually. I don't really need to do much research. Especially years and years of writing American settings with American characters, it's second nature now, to the point where sometimes I will text or tweet using Americanisms. So I'll spell, the word color differently. And then I remember that I'm British and I should put the U in there. So it's just like ingrained at me at this point. But as for like the American slang and the language actually used, I don't really need to research that because I've just grown up with it as a young person in my 20s. I've grown up with American TV, American movies. I've grown up on social media where a lot of the kind of users online kind of talk in generalized American kind of language. So yeah, most of my Twitter timeline, I don't see anyone talking, in Doric or in Scots. It's all sort of just general US English that most people talk on, just because it's more universally recognized online. So yeah, that's kind of how I've learned it all.
I suppose in answer to Christina's question about what inspires you to write plot, the plot, you don't actually start with plot. You're saying that you started with perhaps place and theme.
Mm-hmm, yeah. So I just kind of thought about how could I get Mila, who lives in LA with her celebrity father, how could I get her out to Tennessee, which is where I wanted the book to be set. So then that's how I formed the idea of, drinking too much champagne and movie release publicity. It kind of all just falls into place. It's like a jigsaw. You just take all the little pieces and piece them together, and then you get your story.
Now, kind of along the lines of what I was talking about earlier on, here's a question from Midnight Seer. Is there any chance, I think you're going to say I wish is the answer to this bit, is there any chance of having a Dimily movie someday? Netflix, question mark.
That is my ultimate dream in life. I think for me, the next step as an author would be to one day see one of my work kind of transformed into a movie or a TV show. I would just love to see something come to life. I know all the readers are desperate for a movie, especially a Dimly movie. All the readers are dying for. I'm desperate for one too. But it's very tricky and complicated the way that it works. I think a lot of people think that if I want a movie, I can just snap my fingers and I get one. But as the author, I don't really have much of a say in how it works. I have to kind of be approached by, a production company or a director. So someone has to come to me. So it's kind of just a waiting game. I'm just sitting with my fingers crossed, hoping that one day, I'll get the phone call, I'll get the email to say that we've sold the movie rights.
Now, you've been spoiled in the past. Maybe you're going to have to be a bit more proactive about it.
I know. I mean, I follow
lots of doors.
I know. I do follow lots of production companies and agents and stuff on Twitter, hoping that they'll maybe just stumble across my profile and see everyone talking about my books, and they'll maybe kind of pique their interest. But nothing yet. So we'll see.
You're still young. You're not 24 yet.
I know, but
once. Another question here. I'd quite like to know the answer to this, I have to say. Does writing energize or exhaust you?
It's a mixture of both. It really depends on the scene that I'm writing. For example, the chapter that I was working on today for Trusting Blake, which is the book 2 in the Mila trilogy, I wrote a chapter today that I just absolutely loved. And I actually tweeted that I had that moment today where I fell in love with the book. There's always a very specific scene where I sit there and I'm just so excited, just writing that scene, and just sometimes I just have to take a break and just stare at my screen because I'm like, oh, I just love this scene so much. So chapters like that where it's kind of upbeat and fun or romantic are really fun to write. But then sometimes if you're writing a more dramatic, intense scene, that can be a bit more draining. And sometimes even just trying to like think about the book. So even when I'm not physically writing, sometimes if I'm just thinking through ideas in my head, that can be exhausting in itself. It can be quite overwhelming trying to piece together the story in my head. So sometimes I just end up taking a nap instead of writing because it's just too much to think about. But yeah, it's a mixture of both.
But you're fast talking and you're fast thinking. How do you get your energy? Do you think you've got more energy than most?
Probably less. As I say, I'm quite a slow writer. But again, that's just because I want it to be perfect.
Do you do mental workouts? Do you do physical workouts? How do you actually keep your energy levels high?
Well, I've kind of let it slip at the moment because I've been so busy with deadlines, but I would go to the gym all the time. I was very into running, which I'm hoping to get back into. So yeah, to keeping active, keeping fit is kind of what I would do to energize myself.
And you have quite a clean lifestyle then?
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. I feel like I've matured. I feel like I'm a nice kind of, yeah.
Yeah, because I was looking at one of your online videos and you were talking about you got this idea when you were sitting in church, and I have to say I kind of did a bit of a double take at that point. I thought, oh my goodness me, she goes to church like the people in Becoming Mila. Are you a churchgoer?
I used to be when I was younger, but not anymore.
Oh, I see. So that was part of your life then.
I grew up, grew up. My grandparents are, really strong churchgoers, so I've been brought up in the kind of church family.
Another question, this time is from Holly. In the spirit of Pride Month, would you ever have LGBTQ characters for main love interest?
I think I would love to, but I just feel like as kind of a straight girl, I wouldn't be able to do it justice. I don't think it's my place to kind of write about a character that's LGBTQ as a main character. I wouldn't want to do it wrong. I don't have experience with it. So yeah, I would love to, but as I say, I just don't think I would be able to do it justice the way it deserves.
And what about the themes for your books then? Do you feel, because a lot of young adult fiction takes on contemporary issues, you're not really an issues-based writer, from what I can gather.
Yeah, I'm more just contemporary fun, but also in the background, I kind of like to weave the more sort of important topics in the background. So it's not at the forefront of the novel, but they are going on in the characters' lives, which I think is a real representation of what real life is like. We are all just living our lives, but we all have our own kind of issues going on in the background. Everyone does. No one's life is perfect. So I think it's important for my teenagers to be teenagers, to go out and have fun, but they do have, their issues going on too.
But perhaps bringing in some diversity might be something that you might think about for the future.
Yeah, of course. Yep. As I say, I'm always kind of excited to see what's next, to branch out and explore new things.
That'd be great. Now let me see what else we've got here. What was an early experience where you learned that language had power? That's a very good question.
Yeah, it's quite a smart question. Don't know. I think probably I remember taking a book from the library.
Or maybe you did have the whole library out.
It was an adult fiction. And I was only about 10 or 11 when I read it. I think my mum actually checked it out from the library and I just borrowed it. And I remember reading that book and feeling really affected by like the writing style. And because that was probably like the first sort of grown-up adult book I'd ever read, I didn't realize that, words could make you feel such a certain way. So probably I think that, but I can't remember what the book was. I just remember it was like, I think it was called Family Matters or something. I can't even remember. I just remember our baby rolled off the bed or something. It's honestly, my memory is so hazy, but I just remember feeling really emotionally impacted by the writing. And for me, that was totally a new thing to like be feeling emotional and teary-eyed over a book because it's just words on the page. But yeah.
And did you find at that time it was easier to write what you were thinking than it was to say what you were thinking? Because, you know, teenagers are notoriously poor actually about conveying their feelings. You know, very often they'll bottle things up. But so was writing for you a kind of release?
Kind of. I remember I would always
stereotype. Maybe that's a stereotype.
Yeah, no, but I remember like if I'd had an argument with friends or something, as you do when you're 15 years old, you argue with your friends all the time. So, you know, if I was having stuff going on that I didn't want to think about, I would turn to writing, and I would just kind of focus on that and put my energy into writing instead.
Mm-hmm. What one song that inspired, helped you to write Becoming Mila? Is there one song?
Well, I'm gonna say an artist rather than a specific song. I'm gonna say Mitchell Tenpenny. He is a more recent artist on the country scene, but he's one of my favorite artists, and I pretty much just listen to his albums on repeat. So Mitchell Tenpenny, if anyone wants to check him out.
Is that on a Spotify playlist from you?
Yep, and one of his songs is mentioned within the book as well. Blake performs it at the bonfire, so that's a Mitchell Tenpenny song.
That's a bit of a changer, that one as well, isn't it? A life changer. From Kim, love to hear that you're a fan of country music. Ooh, who are your favourite country singers and groups? Well, we just heard Mitchell Tenpenny, but who else would you like to drop in there?
Oh, also Hunter Hayes. So many, Dan and Shay, Rascal Flatts. They're old school now, but I still love Rascal Flatts. Even Keith Urban and things, I love all them. Carrie Underwood, Taylor Swift back in the day, before she kind of became more pop, but her old country albums are amazing. But yeah, I'm always checking out like the newest like Nashville songs on Spotify to kind of discover new artists. And yeah, I just love the genre of music. It's just uplifting. I just love it.
So what introduced you to country music?
I'm not sure what actually specifically introduced me to it. I just remember really enjoying it. And I remember thinking it was perfect for writing. I would often have country music on in the background because I find that country music is kind of like storytelling. If you listen to a country song, they're always telling a story. And even just the words in a country song, I find can be really inspiring and motivating. So yeah, I just like listening to country in the background because they're telling a story while I'm writing a story.
Yeah, there's always a narrative in country music.
Yeah. If you actually kind of sit down and listen to the lyrics, every country song is a story.
Very often quite emotional as well.
Yeah.
Bit sad. From Christina, we've kind of touched on this, but what does your family think of your writing? And I've not even asked you, your dad isn't a reader. Has he read your books?
No, he hasn't read them. My dad, I don't think he's read a book in his life. And I keep saying to him, you'll have to check them out one day, but at the same time, I'm kind of relieved that he's not read them because there's probably some scenes, like the more intimate scenes, that I don't think I would want my dad reading, especially because he knows I wrote them at a young age. So I don't mind too much.
Does he watch it? Will he be watching something like this?
He might be. I'm not sure. I did send him the link, so he could be. So hi, Dad, if you're watching, you better go read the book soon.
I know, you're going to have to shame him for this.
I know.
What about other members of your family? Your mum's presumably read them.
Yeah, my mum, she's reading Becoming Mila at the moment and really enjoying it. My sister isn't a reader, but she's always read my books. I think she feels she has to because she's my sister. She's like, okay, I don't read, but I'll read your books. My friends all read them. My grandma has attempted to read some of my books, but my grandma and granddad are quite old-fashioned, so it's not exactly their cup of tea. So I don't expect them to read it. But yeah, and all my aunties, even some of my uncles, they all check out the books too. And I've got a 15-year-old cousin, so I think she's old enough now to read them as well, so can pass them down to her.
Maybe she'll start writing.
Maybe. It would be nice if one of my younger cousins got into writing as well.
Do you hear, this is another question, do you hear from readers much, and what kinds of things do they say?
Yeah, so I'm really active on social media, which means that I get to hear from my readers every day. So across Instagram, across Twitter, like I can see everything that my readers are saying. People are always tweeting me their thoughts on the books and just generally kind of having banter with them, which I love doing. I love kind of chatting with my readers, and we have a lot of fun together. So yeah, it's really nice having that sort of connection.
You see, normally, in a book event like this, I would, at the end of the event, say to people, well, you can go to such and such a place and Estelle will sign the book for you. There's none of that. You're not actually meeting your readers. So what do you prefer? Do you feel that you're missing out by not doing book signings at this time? Or are you quite happy just with the kind of social media side of things?
No, I absolutely miss doing the in-person events more than anything. I love meeting my readers. I love getting to hug them all and thank them for reading my books. And I know it means a lot to them to get their books signed. So I love being able to do that for them. And especially the overseas trips, they're some of my favorite things to do. So I had a couple of trips planned for last year that all got cancelled. I was supposed to go to France. I was supposed to go to Gran Canaria for a book festival. They all got cancelled. So I'm dying for kind of this pandemic to all be over so that I can get back to traveling and meeting my readers again, because there's nothing quite like it than actually being in a room surrounded by people that all share the same love for your characters that you do.
So what places have you been to that your book events have taken you to? And of course, you've been translated into how many languages now? I can't remember.
19 territories I'm translated in. So yeah, lots of different languages. But I know my first ever trip abroad was to Finland. We went to Helsinki, and I've been to France a couple of times, Spain, Germany, been to Poland, the Netherlands. Where else have I been? I think I've been to Belgium, Ireland.
You've been to America?
Not for a book event, no.
That's really the deal.
I would love to my American publisher, they're a small sort of publisher as well. So, and it's such a big thing to bring an international author over. But yeah, maybe one day.
Yeah, no, that sounds perfect. You have to have your book launch in the, what's it called? The honky tonk, what's it called?
Honky Tonk Central.
Central, that was it. Yeah. It sounds like something out of Friends, actually. But I do like the fact that you feel as if you've got this huge international friendship. But what about the translators? Have you met any of your translators?
I've met some of them when I've gone overseas and like visited my foreign publishers at their offices. I've kind of gotten to meet some of my translators, which is so cool to me as well, that they've sat and went through all my work word for word and translated it into a different language. Like I can't wrap my head around that. Like it's just amazing. And of course it brings the book to so many new audiences as well when it gets translated into other languages. So it makes it more accessible for everyone. And yeah, there's nothing better than seeing your book with lots of different, foreign covers and different editions in different languages. I've got a whole collection. They're like my pride and joy. So I love having all the copies of all the different editions.
From Martina, are you finished writing the 3 installments of your new book series? Well, we know the answer is no, because you're still in book 2.
Yeah, I'm still writing book 2 at the moment. Hopefully finishing that next week, if all goes well. Deadline is next Thursday, so a week today. So we'll see. And then that comes out in November. And then I'll do the edits for book 2, and then I'll jump straight into writing book 3. And book 3 at the moment is scheduled for May next year.
So that's also answering Melody's question, because she wants to know when the next Mila is going to be released. What's your favourite book that you've written thus far?
That's tough, because I love all my books for different reasons. I'm going to have to say Just Don't Mention It, which is the 4th book in the Dimly series. That book is essentially Tyler's point of view of Dimly, if that makes sense. So that's my only book where I've written from a boy's point of view. So that was just a totally different experience writing that book, and it's probably my most emotional book too. I cried a lot while writing that book, and I'm still really proud of that book too. So yeah, Just Don't Mention It is probably going to be my favourite for a long time.
This is the last question. You've only got seconds to answer it. We've only got less than a minute to go. But from Blackberry, what do you hope the readers learn from your books?
That it's okay to be young and to figure yourself out and to make mistakes. Like, no one has to be perfect. We're all grown up. The world is confusing. And I think just showing my characters that they all have flaws too. Hopefully my readers can be more happy with who they are as a person too.
Perfect answer. Well, it's been such fun interviewing you, Estelle. This has been great. The hour's just flown by. I hope it has for you.
Yeah,
And I don't think I need to wish you any luck with the new series of books. I think they'll be brilliant. Becoming Mila is now on sale. You can buy it and all of the other books which are featuring over the Scottish Books long weekend online from bookshop.org. Sadly, there is no signing of the books live, but perhaps next time we meet, Estelle, we'll be face to face in the same room, and I will actually have to point out where the emergency exits are. Thanks very much. I've really loved it, and I hope you, the audience, have enjoyed it too. And you'll definitely enjoy Becoming Mila. Thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.